What's going on, guys? Chandler here. So this is going to be my new segment on my YouTube channel called First Listen Review that is taken from my $5 tier full album reactions. So I react to the entire album, and then at the very end I give my overall thoughts and initial thoughts and a score on the album as a whole. So again, if you do like what you see and want to support the channel going forward, head over to patreon.com/ChandlerBurtonEntertainment. This is exclusive to the $5 tier. Again, you get a full album reaction, review, and a whole bunch of other perks as well if you guys are interested. And again, there's always a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the review, and thank you all so much for watching.
Friday, Slipknot will release their new album, The End So Far, on September 30th. This is their follow-up to 2019's We Are Not Your Kind, and it is their final album with Roadrunner Records. They have been with that label since the onset of their career, and it is remarkable. They have accomplished a lot together, and time will tell what Slipknot does going forward, whether or not they remain independent. They're probably also getting lots of very interesting offers given their status. But now the band will release this new record on Friday in the meantime with producer Joeb Rogers at the helm, and he's previously worked with Tool and Queens of the Stone Age. And in a new interview with Music Radar, guitarist Jim Root says he's not exactly sure the band was able to reach their full potential working with the acclaimed producer because of the COVID restrictions that were placed on them during this recording process. He goes on to point out that they weren't able to do pre-production on this record because of those restrictions. He told Music Radar, Joeb Rogers is an amazing producer. He's got an amazing track record, and I feel like we weren't prepared for Joeb Rogers, and I feel like we were not able to use Joeb Rogers to his full extent. You know what I mean? We did not do pre-production. We essentially built this record in the studio, and a lot of that was due to COVID and us being separated, and the circumstances led us to do the record the way it was done, with my mindset being the way it was. I didn't have a ton of creative input. I felt kind of rushed trying to come up with ideas for this or that arrangement. We weren't rehearsed as a band. We did not come in knowing the songs top to bottom, and that affected the record. That put us behind schedule. It had us not really arguing and fighting with each other, but trying to figure it out, like what is the best way to approach this, knowing that we are doing what we are doing. More directors will say constantly that they never finish a movie, they just abandon them. I feel like more than anything with this record, we had to abandon it and move on. You can make a plan and you can plan as much as you want, but the big clock above your head and the budget from the label and all this stuff in the studio we were at and the scheduling of that, there are so many factors that were against us making this record that I am surprised we were able to finish it. And then it is taking us so long to get it out compared to how long it took us to track it. It's like, well, if it has taken this long to get it out, then we could have taken our fucking time with pre-production and, in my mind, put out a better product. And that's not to say that we're disappointed with what we're putting out. It's where we were at. It's what we were able to do given the circumstances and the things that we had to work with. But it's like the movies. Directors will say constantly that they never finish a movie. They just abandon them. I feel like more than anything with this record, we had to abandon it and move from it. And Clown was like, it's not a record. It's not a Slipknot record. We are still touring on We Are Not Your Kind on that tour. And by the way, here are some songs. Well, you can say that, but we are putting a fucking record out, and to the fans, this is a fucking Slipknot record. No matter what you say, that's what it is.
Dang, dude. Again, what a journey of an album. Whether, again, I was going to love it or hate it, I was excited either way. So also really quick here, just to let y'all know, stay tuned for after the credits. I'm going to pull a Marvel Studios here. If you want to see something really special after I do the entire review, stay tuned after, and you will see something, I guess, kind of cool. It's nothing too crazy, but it'll be Slipknot related. But I'm excited to talk about it here. I got a whole bunch of notes I want to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive into the first listen review, and that is coming up next, so stick around for that. All right, my friends. So again, that was Slipknot with their brand new album called The End So Far. Just got done jamming the entire thing. Now, I'm going to try to be as respectful as possible during this review. I have no intentions of being if you love this album, you love it. If you don't love this album, that's completely fine. I think it's very important to know that we are allowed to have opinions, but we can all still be friends, no matter with anything in life, whether it comes to religion, video games, politics, movies. We're all going to agree to disagree on something, and so I'm going to be as respectful as possible here. With that being said, I really like this album, man. I don't think it's their best work ever. I mean, I just don't. But I'm also not trying to compare it to their older stuff, like their self-titled or Iowa. Those albums are great for that time, but Slipknot has now evolved into something different, and that's completely fine. For example, Wage War's my favorite band of all time. They put out an album called Pressure. I really like Pressure. A lot of people didn't, but I appreciate them trying new things. And while again, this is not my favorite Slipknot album, it had so many moments in there that I absolutely loved, and then it had moments in there that I wasn't a huge fan of. And again, that's like with every album that I generally listen to. So let's go ahead and talk about the pros with this album here. Pro number one, I have to say, the vocals and the instruments complement each other very well. Now, I know a lot of people think Slipknot or Stone Sour is technically the Corey Taylor show, but to me, on this album at least, I didn't feel that at all. I thought all the instruments and everything had their chance to shine. The wooka wooka DJ guy, the keg, the Corey's vocals, Jim and mixed guitar playing, everything above I thought sounded really good. The production was well balanced. Everyone just had their time to shine, because again, there were some songs on there while I actually preferred the instrument parts over the vocals, or I prefer the vocals over the instruments. So it was kind of like a back and forth thing. And then there was the songs that I really loved that we'll talk about, my top 3 songs, that just worked really well together. Nothing felt overpowered. It did not feel like the Corey Taylor show to me. It felt like Slipknot. And I thought, again, that's the biggest compliment that I can give it. It felt like a Slipknot album, in my personal opinion, despite the fact what Jim was saying in an interview. I thought that was really cool, and we'll talk about, as you could probably see on the screen. I also loved on this album that it did, like with other Slipknot albums, has really cool, unpredictable moments that really elevate this band to being, again, the greatest metal band of our generation. I mean, there's songs like Warranty that I thought was really unique, where I thought the song was over, and then it comes back in with a really cool part, and I'm like, that's so cool. And then you also have songs like Medicine for the Dead. The beginning of that did feel like a horror movie, and the chorus on that was so unique. It was just really, really clever singing. I thought that song was really, really cool. It's a little bit long, but it's a really, really cool song. So again, it just has really cool, unpredictable moments that I personally enjoyed. Again, you don't have to do anything crazy, but if you add new elements like that in there, it makes me love the songs even more. So I thought they did a really good job of throwing those really cool moments in there. And then honestly, the last pro that I would give it here is that all these songs are very well put together. When Jim and them were talking about this doesn't, and Clown were talking about how we wish we had more time to put these songs together, or Clown said this doesn't really feel like a Slipknot album, I thought it did. Even the songs that I weren't a huge fan of, I thought they particularly were really well crafted together. Again, better than most bands nowadays, So I felt personally, all the songs really were put together quite well, and I thought they did a really good job. This album, I thought, was really good. Sincerely, it's not perfect, and let's go and talk about why it's not perfect. Jumping into my cons here, I would say con number one is that some of the songs on this album, just while I think they are very well put together, they aren't bad songs, they kind of just don't really fit on this album per se. Now, obviously, you can't really do an 8-track album. If I were to say cut off a couple of songs, it obviously would be more of, I guess, a shorter album, or an EP, I guess you could say. But again, for example, again, really well put together song. I mean, we'll start with the obvious here. Adderall. It started out kind of like some kind of rap beat. I made a Snoop Dogg joke in the beginning of that, doing a fake rap, and I was like, it kind of felt like a rap beat, and then it kind of jumps in with the piano and the guitar, and it sounded like something from the 70s, something from the Who or something like that. It was just a very interesting sound. While I think it was really cool, it just didn't really fit the vibe of the album per se. I would also say Acidic and Heirloom also as well. While again being very well put together songs, I just felt like they didn't really fit onto this album. I kept saying over and over and over this entire album that a lot of it sounded like Stone Sour. And obviously I know Corey Taylor is the vocalist of both, and I completely get that. But, and again, I'm of the mindset it doesn't need to be heavy for it to be good, but it was a little hard for me to differentiate, like, this sounds like Stone Sour, this sounds like Slipknot. Like, it was kind of like they combined all the elements to put this album together, like Stone Sour and Slipknot. So, in my personal opinion, those few songs didn't really fit on the album. Again, they're not badly put together, it just didn't really, it's kind of like a puzzle piece where it's like, you know, we know it's going to fit somewhere, it just doesn't fit here. So that's my personal opinion on that here. Again, there were parts of this album that were a little bit too long. Like, again, I do like Medicine for the Dead, but I did feel like it was a little bit long. The end of Yen, I forgot that end of the song was a little bit too long. While I like that song, a little bit too long for my taste as well. And Decide or Decade, or however you say that here, a little bit too long in my personal opinion. They probably could have cut the fat off a couple of those songs to make it a little more tightly woven, but nothing that will take away from my score of the album here. And honestly, I gotta be honest with you guys here, the last part of the album I thought kind of struggled a little bit here, because again, I just kept making all these comparisons. So honestly, from the Dying song all the way down to Medicine for the Dead, I really enjoy. Everything else down from there, except for like one song, I thought actually struggled. So I do prefer the first part of this album over the last part. Not saying that it was bad, as I kept saying here. I prefer the last part. I prefer the first part, and I feel like the last part of the album kind of struggled for me a little bit. All right, we have gotten to the top 3 songs for my first listen review. I gotta say, number 1, Hive Mind. Again, my friend Adam texted me this morning and was saying, dude, this is my favorite song of the album, and I could see why. Super cool riffs, really good screams. That's a song that I'm saying, like, the instruments and the vocals really complement each other very, very well. And that, to me, that's a great Slipknot song. Like, really, really good. Even on the newer stuff, you know, like, again, We Are Not Your Kind. Like, there's still some iconic Slipknot songs that are newer. Like, for me, Unsainted, Soulway First, I think those are really iconic Slipknot songs. I love both those songs. But getting back to this album here, I gotta say Hive Mind, definitely a banger through and through. Super, super sick song. I also really like Warranty. I thought, again, that had some really cool moments in that song that felt like Slipknot, but added some new elements in there that I was like, this is really, really cool. And I love the vibe on it. It's heavy when it needs to be, melodic, adding some cool elements in here. I loved it, man. I thought that song was super cool. Probably my favorite on the first initial listen. I just really like that song. And then I actually really, really like H377, make sure I got that right here. At first, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm into it here, but then it just kind of picked up and started adding those guitar riffs and those cool guitar moments, and again, the vocals sounded really cool. So it took a little bit of listening. I listened to it again to make sure. I was like, do I want to put this on here? And after listening to it again, absolutely. I absolutely love that song. Super, super cool song. Again, I plan on listening to this album again, and so on my first initial listen, those are my top 3 songs. But again, I like the majority of this album. Again, listening to this album, I was a little bit skeptical going in, because again, some people told me that it's fantastic. Some people said they absolutely hated it. I really enjoyed the end so far. I thought it had enough cool moments in there where I was like, you know what, man, it's not the best album they've ever made, but it's definitely not as bad as I thought it was going to be, especially again after Jim and Clown, what they said in like the interview I put in the beginning of this video. I was a little bit worried, because even the band was coming out saying like, you know, I'm like, oh crap. Like, even they're saying it's probably not their best work. But while I agree it is not their best work, I am of the mindset that this album is good. If you're expecting like the self-titled or Iowa, like anything like that at all, then you are going to be disappointed. But as I said, I'm not trying to compare them to their older stuff. Again, that was good for its time, but now it's 2022. And again, they're such a big band now. They still have those heavy elements. I mean, if Slipknot went like country or something, then I would be like, okay, then no. But honestly, like, I'm okay with bands changing their sound, and I like it. Again, there's plenty of bands that I listen to that have changed their sound. Again, you look at Fit for a King with The Path, or Wage War with Pressure. It's different than their other material, but I still love it. I can find things about it that I like. They're not my favorite albums, but I don't hate them necessarily, and that's how I feel about this album. I don't hate it. I think it's super cool. I think there's definitely going to be songs on here that are going to be super sick live, and I think there's going to be some iconic songs over the next couple of years that people will really enjoy. Again, I like the album a lot. I really, really do. I thought it was super cool, and I'm going to be honest with you here. I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. While again, it's not perfect. It's got some songs that kind of drag it down a little bit too long, and I do prefer the first part of the album over the last part. I thought this was an absolutely solid Slipknot album through and through, and I cannot wait to listen to it again. That's right. I'm going to listen to it over and over, and I don't know if it's going to make my top 10 albums of the year. It might, but again, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was a really good listen. Oh, hey, you're still here. So I want to give you guys a quick little just Easter egg for sticking around to the very end. Again, I'm a huge fan of the Marvel movies here, and so I'm going to give you my quick ranking of all the Slipknot albums from my least favorite to my favorite, just something a little bit fun at the end. So I appreciate you sticking around to the very end here. So I'm just going to go over these really quick. I'm not going to go into like super big detail on why I think the albums are ranked this way, just my own personal opinion. And again, I love to know your ranking down below as well, when it's on YouTube or on Patreon. I love to see your rankings of the albums here. So in last place, I'm going to put 0.5, The Gray Chapter. That album's a little bit too long for me here, like an hour 14 minutes. Definitely could have killed some of those songs on there and make it a little bit shorter, but overall not a bad album, but something's got to go in last place. So I'm going to put 0.5, The Gray Chapter. Don't hate it, but definitely my least favorite. The next place is going to be All Hope Is Gone. Again, Psychosocial, Sulfur, Wherein Lies Continues, or wherever that song is. A lot of underrated bangers on that album, but I generally only go back to Psychosocial and Sulfur, so only just a couple of songs off that album. So not a bad album, but definitely lower on the list for me here. Then I'm going to put The End So Far. I think it's, again, a good album, kind of just right in the middle here. I thought that was really good. Again, my opinion on that may change. It may go lower. It may go higher. But I think right now, it's perfect where it's at here. And then I'm going to say Volume 3. Definitely a super iconic album for me here. Again, maybe listen to it again. It's not all the songs hit for me here, but the majority of the album does hit. And I think that album is really, really good. Super iconic. Again, before I forget, dude, come on. So good, dude. Then I'm going to put We Are Not Your Kind. A lot of people may think that's controversial, but I love We Are Not Your Kind. I think it is one of the better Slipknot albums for sure. I think it's super sick. And then I'm going to put the self-titled. Most people may not agree with that here, but again, I really do love the self-titled. But again, I got to say, number one is Iowa, one of my favorite albums of all time. It is heavy, and I really enjoy it. But again, overall, just that album, just as a general, made me a metalhead and made me want to play like metal music. So that's one of the albums that truly inspired me here. But again, I love to know your ranking down below here in the comments on Patreon or on YouTube here. Thanks again for sticking around. Hope you guys take care.